Identity fraud or identity theft is a growing threat that departments around the world continue to combat. But police in Blaine, Minnesota have created an impactful way to make sure that the victims remain the focus of the investigation. Thank you both for being here today.
Thank you.
Chief Brown Podney, I want to get started with you. Can you kind of lay out for us just how prevalent of an issue identity fraud or identity theft is in Blaine in particular?
I think identity theft has been one of the most increasing crimes that we have. And it used to be when we'd see, victims who were lost, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000. Now we're seeing tens, even hundreds of thousands of dollars. In the last probably 3 months, we've had 2 cases over $200,000, and it's staggering, really.
That's a devastating amount.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So Andrea, to bring you into the conversation here, how would helping the victim of identity fraud or of identity theft be different from the victim of, say, a violent crime or some other criminal activity?
It's often very similar. They experience different types of emotions, so like fear, loss of sense of safety, isolation, confusion, and both types of victims of crimes need reassurance about what comes next, kind of guidance through the criminal justice system, and some resources to help them recover their sense of normalcy.
That's perfect. You mentioned resources. That brings me to my next question. What are the specific types of resources that your department offers?
Some need help learning how to monitor their credit or how to monitor their bank accounts online. Some have lost a significant amount of money and may need guidance with applying for county resources, food support, housing support, those kinds of things. Or they may need help reporting to other agencies. We recommend people report also to the Federal Trade Commission and places like that. Additionally, a lot of people find comfort in support groups and those kinds of emotional supports.
That's interesting that you ended on that, because I would think, sometimes with these types of crimes, there's a little bit of embarrassment on the part of the victim. Like, how could I fall for this? What do you say to those victims? How do you support them and kind of work through that so that people aren't hesitant to come forward if it were to happen to them?
I do hear that a lot. It's a lot of, I should have known better, or I knew this was a scam. But I just reassure them that, they're not alone. I do deal with these types of crimes multiple times a day. So I let them know that and thank them for reporting, because we don't know the prevalence of these things because a lot of them go unreported. I think the statistic is something like 1 in 20 is actually reported. So for each crime that's reported, there's so many that we don't know about.
Wow.
And there's a lot of reluctance to tell their friends and family, which increases their isolation. And I encourage people to just be open and go to people for support.
And how should officers be handling these types of incidents specifically? It's very different from, say, responding to a different kind of call.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things, because as officers, they want action, right? They want to go in, they want to chase the bad guy and things like that. And this involves sitting down, getting a lot of details, tracking things, following the money, so to speak, following paper trails, and ultimately a lot of times the officers don't get to see or hold the offender accountable because it may be somebody certainly across town in another state, in another country. This is something we may never find the offender, but that doesn't diminish the emotions or the challenges that the person who's the victim is going to go through.
Right, and I would imagine that would be very frustrating for officers. You want to see that resolution.
Absolutely.
Final question for you, and maybe for you both, but do you feel that every department, based on the success that you've had, should have a victims unit specifically dedicated to identity fraud or identity theft?
I do. We wouldn't have this position if we didn't feel that way. So,
Valid point.
Because for law enforcement and public safety in general, that's our job at the end of the day, is to make sure we are trying to protect and advocate for our victims. And as much as we get involved with other things, and at the end of the day, that is the core of our existence and what we do. But unfortunately, so many times we're going call to call, and we need somebody who's a specialist at that. A lot of our officers, they're very good at what they do, but they may not be very good at follow-up or accommodating victims' needs, and that's why it's important to have somebody who's specifically trained, and that's their skill set, to make sure that we are taking care of the people that matter the most, and that's our victims. So.
Andrea, would you have any specific advice to a department that may be looking to create this type of unit?
Yeah, so there's lots of creative funding sources for that. I know that IACP has funded our position through a grant to get things kind of started. There's a whole getting started guide from them, but I think that one of the main things to do is identify the service gaps. So find out where you're missing follow-up with victims and things like that. Find those key items that you want your victim services person to do, and figure out how they can meet those needs.
Well, thank you both so much for all of your work, and thank you for your time today.
Yeah, thank you for your interest in this. This is an incredibly important issue, and we're glad you're bringing it to the spotlight.